Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the stars. He had been fighting wars for over 50 years. His purple skin showed the scars of many battles, and his forearms moved with the practiced ease of a veteran. Soldier, the hegemony had made him one of their best commanders, and he was proud of that fact. The bridge around him hummed with quiet activity. His crew worked at their stations, checking weapons and shields. A massive ship called Eternal. Dominion was the pride of the hegemony fleet. It was 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Behind him followed 30 other warships, each one capable of wiping out primitive civilizations. Zethkar had done this many times before. Some young race would discover space travel and think they could challenge the hegemony. They would attack a few scout ships or refuse to surrender their worlds. Then Zethkar would arrive with his fleet and show them the error of their ways. Most species surrendered quickly once they saw what they were facing. The smart ones joined the hegemony willingly. The stubborn ones were destroyed. Today was supposed to be another easy mission. The report said a species called humans had destroyed 3 hegemony scout ships near the edge of known space. The intelligence officers described them as a young race that had barely learned to travel between stars. They used simple weapons that fired metal bullets and crude nuclear bombs. Their ships were small and looked like they were built in scrapyards. Lieutenant Vashtar approached with the latest reports. His green skin was pale with worry, but Zethkar assumed it was just normal nervousness before battle. Commander, we are receiving more intelligence about the humans, Vashtar said in his thin voice. What does it say? Zethkar asked, without looking away from the stars. They have spread across their entire star system, sir. Every planet and moon shows signs of military construction. Our scouts counted over 10,000 separate installations. Zethkar finally turned to look at his lieutenant. 10,000 installations? For a primitive species? That seems excessive. Yes, sir. The analysts think they might be using their entire population for military purposes. Even their civilian areas show weapons signatures. This was unusual, but not alarming. Some species panicked when they first encountered the hegemony and tried to militarize everything they could. It never helped them much. Primitive weapons were still primitive, no matter how many you built. How long until we reach their system? Zethkar asked. 6 hours, sir. Good. Signal the fleet to prepare for standard pacification protocol. We will give them one chance to surrender before we begin bombardment. Zethkar walked to his command chair and settled into its familiar embrace. The chair adjusted to his body automatically, connecting him to the ship's sensors and weapon systems. Through the neural link, he could feel the power of his entire fleet. Hundreds of energy cannons, thousands of missiles, and shields that could withstand the explosion of a star. No primitive species had ever stood against such power dot as they traveled through hyperspace. Zethkar reviewed what they knew about humans. The species had evolved on a world they called Earth in a system they named Sol. Their planet was mostly water, with large land masses covered in different climates. They had only achieved spaceflight about 200 years ago, which made them practically infants compared to most galactic civilizations. What made humans slightly interesting was their history. Unlike most species that developed peaceful societies before reaching space, humans had spent their entire existence fighting wars with each other. Their planet showed scars from thousands of conflicts, including several where they had almost destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons. The hegemony analysts found this curious, but not particularly threatening. The ship's computer chimed softly, indicating they were approaching the target system. Zethkar opened his eyes and connected fully to the ship's sensors. What he saw made him pause. The human star system was unlike anything he had encountered before. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and turned into a fortress. The planets bristled with defensive installations that looked crude but numerous. Ships moved in complex patterns between the defenses. Too many ships for such a young civilization to possess. "Lieutenant, are you seeing this?" Zethkar asked. "Yes, sir. The sensor readings are ... extensive. We count over 50,000 individual targets." 50,000? Zethkar stood up from his chair. "Show me the breakdown." The main screen lit up with tactical displays. Weapon platforms surrounded every major body in the system. Mobile defense stations moved in patrol routes that showed sophisticated planning. Fighter squadrons practiced maneuvers that looked almost like dancing, but Zethkar recognized them as combat formations. "Commander," came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving a transmission from the humans. Put it on screen." The display changed to show a human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. He had short brown hair and calm blue eyes that seemed to look directly at Zethkar. The human's face showed no fear, which was unusual for first contact with the hegemony. "I am Captain Jake Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force," the human said in a steady voice. "You are entering human space without permission. Turn your ships around and leave immediately. This is your only warning." Zethkar almost laughed. This primitive creature was trying to threaten a hegemony fleet. The audacity was amusing, if nothing else. "Human Sullivan," Zethkar replied, making sure his voice carried proper authority. "I am Commander Zethkar of the hegemony fleet. Your species has attacked our vessels and refused diplomatic contact. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." The human's expression did not change. If anything, he looked slightly disappointed. "I was hoping you would be smarter than this," Sullivan said. "We tried to warn your scouts away peacefully. They chose to ignore us. We tried to make diplomatic contact through proper channels. Your people responded with threats. Now you bring a war fleet to our home and demand surrender. Your primitive weapons cannot thrust in against hegemony technology," Zethkar said. "Surrender now, and some of your people may be allowed to live as workers in our empire." Sullivan shook his head. Slowly, "Commander, you clearly do not understand what you are dealing with. Humans do not surrender. We do not back down. We do not compromise when our survival is at stake. You have made the mistake of threatening our home. Then you will die," Zethkar said simply. "Maybe," Sullivan replied with what might have been a smile, "but we will not die alone. Your people sent scouts to study us. Did they tell you what they learned about human history?" Zethkar felt a slight chill. The human's calm confidence was unsettling. "They told us you are a primitive species that fights among yourselves," Zethkar said. "Did they tell you how we fight?" Sullivan asked. "Did they explain what 10,000 years of constant warfare teaches a species? Did they mention what happens when humans stop fighting each other and focus on a common enemy?" The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could sense their unease. The human's words had carried a weight that simple threats could not match. "Sir," Lieutenant Vashtar said quietly, "should we proceed with the attack?" Zethkar looked at the tactical display again. The human defenses were extensive, but they were still primitive compared to hegemony technology. Numbers meant nothing without proper weapons and training. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "We advance on the outer defenses. Standard formation. Show these humans what happens when primitives challenge the hegemony." As his ships moved deeper into the human system, Zethkar tried to ignore the growing sense that something was very wrong. The humans showed no sign of panic or retreat. Their ships moved with disciplined precision, forming defensive lines that suggested they actually believed they could win. For the first time in 50 years of warfare, Commander Zethkar began to wonder if he had underestimated his enemy. The first indication that something was terribly wrong came when Zethkar's fleet reached the asteroid belt. His sensors showed what appeared to be a normal field of space rocks, but as his ships moved closer, the asteroids began to move. "Commander," Lieutenant Vashtar called out, his voice tight with confusion. "The asteroids are changing position. They appear to be targeting us." Zethkar connected to his ship's sensors and felt his blood turn cold. The humans had not just built weapons on the asteroids. They had turned the asteroids themselves into weapons. Massive chunks of rock and metal were accelerating toward his fleet at incredible speeds. "Evasive maneuvers," Zethkar ordered. "All ships, scatter formation." The first volley of kinetic projectiles struck his outer destroyers before they could fully react. The impact was devastating. These were not energy beams that his shields could deflect. These were solid chunks of matter moving at a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit, they went straight through shields and armor like they were made of paper. The destroyer's silver wing disappeared in a brilliant flash as a 20-ton asteroid fragment punched through its reactor core. The explosion lit up space and sent debris flying in all directions. 2 more destroyers took critical damage as smaller fragments peppered their hulls. "How are they accelerating those projectiles so fast?" Zethkar demanded. "Unknown, sir. The sensor officer replied. "The energy readings suggest they are using some form of mass driver system, but the power requirements should be impossible for their technology level." Another wave of kinetic projectiles swept through the fleet formation. This time, Zethkar's ships were ready and managed to avoid most of the incoming fire, but the message was clear. The humans were not going to make this easy. "Return fire," Zethkar commanded. "Target the largest asteroid installations." His fleet's energy cannons lit up space with beams of coherent plasma. The weapons that could melt through the armor of any known starship struck the human positions with devastating force. Entire asteroid bases vanished in clouds of vaporized rock and metal, but for every installation they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The humans had not built a few large bases that could be easily targeted. They had created thousands of small positions that could strike and move before return fire could eliminate them. "Sir?" came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving multiple transmissions from human fighter squadrons." "Put them on speaker." The bridge filled with chatter from human pilots. Their voices were calm and professional, coordinating attacks with a precision that impressed even Zethkar. "Blue leader to control. Beginning attack run on target 7. Copy. Blue leader. Red squadron will provide cover. Green squadron, watch for debris from the destroyer explosion. Confirmed green leader. All fighters, remember your training." Zethkar watched his tactical display as hundreds of small human ships moved through the battle zone. They were tiny compared to his massive warships, no bigger than escape pods. But they moved with a coordination that suggested extensive training and experience. "How many fighters are we tracking?" he asked. "Over 2,000 confirmed contacts." "Sir, more launching from hidden positions throughout the asteroid field." 2,000 fighters. Zethkar had faced large fighter wings before, but never from a supposedly primitive species. Most young civilizations could barely maintain a few dozen combat spacecraft. The human fighters reached his outer ships and began their attack runs. What followed defied everything Zethkar knew about space combat. The humans did not use energy weapons or guided missiles. Instead, they fired simple projectiles and used tactics that seemed insane. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez led a squadron of 12 fighters against the heavy cruiser, dominant force. Her ships were outnumbered and outgunned by thousands too. Won, but she approached the massive warship as if she had a reasonable chance of victory. "Control, this is Rodriguez. Beginning torpedo run on the big one. Copy Amy. Make it count." Zethkar watched in fascination as Rodriguez's fighters dove toward the cruiser. The ship's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with energy. Beams designed to vaporize incoming threats. Several human fighters disappeared immediately, but the rest kept coming. What happened next made Zethkar question his understanding of tactics. As Rodriguez's fighter took critical damage from defensive fire, she did not retreat or attempt to save her ship. Instead, she aimed directly at the cruiser's command section and accelerated. "Rodriguez, your ship is compromised," came a voice. From another fighter. "Eject now." "Negative. I have a clean shot at their bridge." Her damaged fighter, trailing atmosphere and debris, somehow slipped through the defensive fire. At the last second, Rodriguez ejected from her cockpit while her ship continued on its collision course. The fighter struck the cruiser's bridge, with enough force to penetrate the armor and cause massive internal damage. The cruiser-dominant force listed to one side, its command systems clearly compromised. Rodriguez's wingmen swept in to collect her ejection pod while continuing the attack on the damaged ship. "Did she just ram one of our cruisers?" Lieutenant Vashtar asked in disbelief. "It appears so," Zethkar replied. He had never seen anything like it. The human pilot had deliberately destroyed her own ship to damage his vessel, and she had done it with the calm professionalism of someone following standard procedure. The battle continued around them. Human fighters swarmed his ships like angry insects, using tactics that no sane military would consider. When surrounded, they would ram their ships into hegemony formations. When their weapons ran out, they would use their ships themselves as projectiles. When faced with impossible odds, they would sacrifice themselves to give their wingmen better attack positions. But it was not just suicidal bravery. The humans fought with a creativity that constantly surprised him. They used debris from destroyed ships as cover. They coordinated attacks across vast distances with perfect timing. They seemed to anticipate his fleet's movements and counter them before his orders were even given. "Commander," the tactical officer called out, "we are receiving a general broadcast from the human commander. Put it through." The voice that came over the speakers was female, calm, and absolutely confident. "This is General Ryan Mitchell, commanding Human Defense Forces. Hegemony Fleet, you have now seen what happens when you threaten our outer defenses. These are just our patrol units. You have not yet encountered our main battle line." Zethkar looked at his tactical display. He had lost 6 destroyers and 2 cruisers were badly damaged. The humans had lost hundreds of fighters, but they kept coming as if they had an unlimited supply. "General Mitchell," he replied, "your forces fight bravely, but you cannot win. We have barely begun to use our full firepower." "Commander Zethkar," Mitchell replied, somehow knowing his name, "you still do not understand what you are facing. Every human in this system has spent their entire life preparing for this moment. We have been at war with someone for our entire history. Today, for the first time in 10,000 years, we are all fighting the same enemy." The transmission changed to show tactical displays of the inner system. What Zethkar saw made his heart skip several beats. Massive formations of human warships were moving into position around the inner planets. These were not the small fighters he had been battling. These were proper warships, thousands of them, all moving with the same coordination he had witnessed from the fighter squadrons. "You wanted to see what humanity is capable of," General Mitchell continued. "You are about to learn why we have survived everything our own planet and our own species could throw at us. You are about to discover what happens when humans stop fighting each other and focus on a common threat." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkar staring at readings that suggested the humans had been holding back during the first engagement. The asteroid belt had been a screening force, not their main defense. "Sir," Lieutenant Vashtar said quietly, Should we withdraw and request reinforcements? Sethkar considered the option. He still had most of his fleet intact, and reinforcements could arrive within a few days. But withdrawing would mean admitting that a primitive species had forced a hegemony fleet to retreat. His career would be over, and the political implications would be severe. No, he said finally. We proceed to the inner system. Signal all ships to prepare for full combat engagement. Show these humans what hegemony firepower can accomplish. As his fleet regrouped and moved deeper into the human system, Sethkar tried to ignore the growing certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not fought like any species he had encountered before. They fought as if losing was not an option, as if they would rather die than surrender. Behind him, human fighters continued to harass his rear guard, using hit-and-run tactics. That kept his ships constantly on alert. Ahead of him, the massive human battle fleet waited with the patience of predators, who knew their prey was walking into a trap. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Sethkar began to understand that he might not survive this battle. What happened when Sethkar's fleet reached the inner planets changed everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans activated something they called Protocol 7, and suddenly their entire civilization transformed before his eyes. The transformation began with Earth itself. The blue and green planet that had looked peaceful from a distance suddenly bristled with weapons that emerged from hidden positions. Mountain ranges opened to reveal massive railgun installations. The ocean floors lifted enormous platforms armed with weapons that defied physics. Even the moon began moving, adjusting its orbit to bring hidden weapon systems to bear on his fleet. Commander, the sensor officer called out, his voice shaking. I am reading energy signatures that should not be possible. The humans appeared to have weaponized their entire solar system. Sethkar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Every planet, moon, and space station was now broadcasting weapon signatures. Not just military installations, but civilian areas too. The humans had somehow turned their entire species into a single military force. Put me through to their command center, he ordered. The main screen showed a human female wearing what appeared to be a scientist's coat. She had gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice carried absolute authority when she spoke. I am Dr. Lisa Park, Director of Earth Defense Research. Commander Sethkar, you have made a critical error in judgment. Dr. Park, Sethkar replied, trying to maintain his composure. Your species cannot possibly sustain this level of military activity. You must have civilian populations to protect. Dr. Park smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Commander, you do not understand humanity at all. We do not have civilian populations. We have logistics personnel, research staff, manufacturing workers, and support teams. But every human in this system is part of our military structure. We learned long ago that survival requires total commitment. That is impossible, Sethkar said. No species can maintain such militarization without destroying their own society. You are thinking like a peaceful species, Park replied. We are not peaceful. We have been at war with someone or something for our entire existence. Sometimes we fight each other. Sometimes we fight our environment. Sometimes we fight diseases or disasters or the laws of physics themselves. War is not something we do. War is what we are. The transmission cut to show images from across the human system. Children as young as 10 years old were operating manufacturing equipment that produced weapons and ammunition. Elderly humans worked in command centers, coordinating defensive strategies. Scientists worked alongside soldiers to modify equipment. In real time, every human learns military skills from childhood, Park continued. Every human understands their role in our collective defense. You have not invaded a planet with some soldiers protecting civilians. You have invaded a fortress inhabited entirely by warriors. Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. He had encountered militaristic species before, but nothing like this. The humans had somehow created a civilization where every individual was a potential combatant. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "Begin bombardment of the third planet. Show them what happens when primitives threaten the hegemony." His ships opened fire with their main weapons. Beams of plasma hot enough to melt continents struck the human planet. The energy released in the first volley could have sterilized any normal world, but Earth was not a normal world. The planet's surface rippled with energy shields that absorbed and redirected the incoming fire. Defensive systems that had been hidden underground emerged to counterattack with weapons that violated several known laws of physics. "How are they generating that much power?" Lieutenant Vashtar asked. "Unknown, sir. Their power generation appears to be distributed across their entire planet. They seem to be using their planetary core as a massive reactor." The human counterattack began immediately. Instead of trying to match the hegemony's heavy energy weapons, they used physics itself as a weapon. Artificial gravity wells appeared around Zethkar's ships, dragging them off course and disrupting their formations. Space itself seemed to bend and twist as the humans deployed technologies that should not have existed. But the most terrifying part was the human response to his bombardment. Instead of trying to protect their planet, they began dismantling it. Entire continents were being converted into ammunition for weapons that fired chunks of matter at relativistic speeds. The humans were literally destroying their own world to use it as a weapon against him. "Commander," came a transmission from Captain Tony Phillips aboard a human battleship. "You wanted to see what we are capable of. Watch and learn." Phillips commanded a ship that looked like it had been built in a scrapyard, held together with welds and hope. But as Zethkar watched, the human vessel began to change. Parts of its hull opened to reveal weapon systems that had been hidden. Inside, the ship grew larger as additional sections deployed from what he had thought was cargo space. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the human ships are all transforming. They appear to have been concealing their true capabilities." Every human vessel in the system was revealing hidden weapons and systems. Ships that had looked like cargo haulers deployed batteries of missiles. Civilian stations extended massive gun turrets. Even small transport vessels revealed themselves to be armed with weapons that could threaten his larger ships. The human fleet moved toward his position with the coordination of a single organism. They did not maintain the rigid formations that hegemony doctrine required. Instead, they flowed like water, adapting their tactics moment by moment to counter his every move. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessel," Zethkar ordered. Targeting the largest human ship Dot, his fleet poured devastating firepower into the human flagship. The ship's shields collapsed, and its hull began to burn. But instead of retreating, the damaged vessel accelerated directly toward his own flagship. "Sir, the human ship is on a collision course," Lieutenant Vashtar reported. "They would not dare," Zethkar said, but even as he spoke, he knew he was wrong. The humans had already shown they were willing to sacrifice anything to win. The human flagship struck his ship with enough force to penetrate the outer hull. But instead of exploding, it latched onto the eternal dominion like a parasite. Sections of the human ship opened to reveal boarding tubes that cut through his armor. "Repel boarders," Zethkar ordered. "All security teams to the breach points." What came through those boarding tubes was unlike any military force he had ever faced. The human Marines wore armor that looked crude compared to hegemony equipment, but they moved with a precision that suggested years of training in ship-to-ship combat. Commander Phillips led the boarding party personally. His armor was scarred and dented. His weapons were simple projectile throwers, but he advanced through the ship's corridors as if he owned them. When hegemony security forces tried to stop him, he simply kept coming. When walls blocked his path, he blew holes through them. When his weapons ran out of ammunition, he used them as clubs. "Sir," came a report from the security chief. "The human boarders are not following normal combat procedures. They appear to be willing to fight to the death regardless of odds." Zethkar could hear the sounds of battle echoing through his ship. Explosions, weapon fire, and the screams of his crew members filled the corridors. The humans were not trying to capture his ship. They were trying to destroy it from the inside, but the most disturbing reports came from his other vessels. Human boarding parties had somehow reached multiple ships simultaneously. They moved through zero-atmosphere sections using nothing but handheld propulsion units. They cut through armor with tools that should have been impossible to carry. They fought in damaged sections of ships that should have been uninhabitable. "Commander," Philip's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Your vessel is now under human control. Surrender and your crew will be treated according to the laws of war." "Never," Zethkar replied. "Hegemony forces do not surrender to primitives." "Then you will die like primitives," Phillips responded. "All human forces implement total warfare protocol. No prisoners, no retreat, no mercy." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The humans fought with a savagery that defied civilized warfare. They used their own bodies as weapons when their equipment failed. They continued fighting even when mortally wounded. They turned every corridor, every room, every inch of his ship into a battlefield dot as his flagship burned around him and human forces closed in on his command center. Zethkar finally understood what he was facing. These were not soldiers fighting for territory or resources. These were survivors fighting for their very existence, using skills they had learned through millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill them every day. The humans had not just learned how to fight. They had learned how to win. At any cost, against any odds, using any means necessary. They were not just warriors. They were war itself, given intelligence and purpose, and he had brought them a target worthy of their full attention. Zethkar found himself running through the corridors of his own flagship, something he had never imagined possible. Behind him, human boarders led by Commander Phillips hunted him with the patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to go. His once mighty fleet was scattered and burning, with barely a quarter of his ships still capable of fighting. The retreat had begun 3 hours ago, when it became clear that his remaining vessels could not withstand the human assault. What should have been an orderly withdrawal became a desperate flight as human pursuit forces followed them across 3 star systems, showing no mercy to damaged ships or escape pods. "Sir," Lieutenant Vashtar called through his communication device, "we have reached the emergency bridge. The humans have not found us yet." Zethkar sealed the blast doors behind him and looked around the small backup command center. Only 12 of his crew remained alive out of the thousands who had started this mission. The humans had been methodical in their assault, clearing each section of his ship with military precision. "Status report," he ordered, trying to maintain some semblance of command authority. "The Eternal Dominion is lost, sir. Main power is failing, life support is compromised, and the humans control most of the ship. 7 vessels in our fleet are still responding, but they are all heavily damaged." Zethkar connected to what remained of his sensor array and saw the tactical situation. Admiral Kate Morrison commanded the human pursuit fleet from a ship called UES Retribution. Her forces had been hunting his retreating vessels for days, destroying any ship too damaged to keep up with the main group. "Put me through to Admiral Morrison," he said. The screen showed a human female with short blonde hair and cold blue eyes. She wore a military uniform that was clean and professional, but her expression showed no emotion whatsoever. "Commander." "Sethkar," she said without any greeting. "You are requesting terms of surrender?" "I am requesting safe passage for my remaining crew," Sethkar replied. "This battle is over. There is no need for further bloodshed." Morrison stared at him for several seconds before responding. "Commander, you came to our home system with the intention of destroying our civilization. You bombarded our planet. You threatened our families. Did you expect us to show mercy when you showed none? This is how wars are conducted," Sethkar said. "When one side is clearly defeated, terms are negotiated. This is standard galactic protocol." "We are not bound by galactic protocol," Morrison replied. "We follow human military doctrine, which states that enemies who threaten our survival must be completely eliminated. No enemy ship leaves our space capable of reporting our capabilities to your superiors." The transmission cut, leaving Sethkar staring at a blank screen. He had encountered ruthless enemies before, but never ones who rejected the basic concepts of military surrender and prisoner exchange. "Sir," came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving multiple transmissions from throughout hegemony space. It appears the humans have been busy. Show me." The screen filled with reports from hegemony outposts across the sector. Human strike forces were attacking supply depots, communication relays, and forward bases with surgical precision. They moved like ghosts, appearing from nowhere to strike critical targets before vanishing back into deep space. Colonel Matt Turner led one such force against a major hegemony fuel depot. His ships looked like modified cargo vessels, nothing that should have posed a threat to a heavily defended military installation. But the humans had somehow acquired detailed intelligence about the base's defenses and struck with perfect timing. How? Did they know about our hidden bases? Lieutenant Vashtar asked. "Unknown, sir. But the attacks suggest they have been gathering intelligence for months, possibly years before first contact." More reports flooded in. Human infiltration teams had somehow penetrated deep into hegemony space without being detected. They knew fleet positions, supply routes, and command structures better than many hegemony officers. But the most disturbing intelligence came from captured personnel reports. Dr. Nancy Foster, a human interrogation specialist, had somehow extracted critical information from hegemony prisoners without using traditional torture methods. Her techniques involved psychological manipulation that left prisoners wanting to cooperate rather than being forced to talk. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "human ships are approaching our position. Admiral Morrison is moving to intercept." Sethkar watched as the human fleet closed in on his crippled vessels. The pursuit had been relentless, following his ships through hyperspace jumps and detecting them no matter where they tried to hide. The humans seemed to understand hegemony technology better than the hegemony did. "All remaining ships," he broadcast on the fleet frequency. "This is Commander Sethkar. Prepare for final engagement. We will show these primitives how hegemony warriors die." The response from his ship captains was immediate and proud. Even facing certain death, his officers maintained their honor and discipline. This was how civilized species conducted warfare, with dignity and courage even in defeat. The final battle lasted less than an hour. Morrison's forces struck with overwhelming firepower and perfect coordination. They did not waste time with elaborate maneuvers or dramatic gestures. They simply destroyed every hegemony vessel with efficient, methodical precision. Sethkar felt his ship shudder as human weapons tore through what remained of his armor. Emergency systems failed one by one as the Eternal Dominion died around him. Through the hull breaches, he could see human marines approaching in boarding craft, but something unexpected happened. Instead of finishing off his crippled flagship, Admiral Morrison's forces stopped firing. The human admiral herself came aboard his ship, walking through corridors filled with debris, and the bodies of his crew. Morrison found him in the emergency bridge, sitting in his command chair and waiting for death. She was accompanied by 2 Marines who kept their weapons ready, but did not immediately fire. "Commander Zethkar," she said in a calm voice, "you fought bravely. Your crew died with honor. That deserves recognition, even from enemies." "Are you here to gloat over your victory?" Zethkar asked. "No. I am here to deliver a message to your superiors. You will be the sole survivor of this fleet, and you will return to hegemony space to tell them what happened here." Zethkar stared at her in confusion. "You are releasing me?" "We are sending you home with intelligence about human capabilities and a diplomatic proposal. Your government needs to understand what they are dealing with before this conflict escalates further." Morrison handed him a data crystal containing detailed records of the battle and technical specifications for human weapon systems that violated basic assumptions about technological development. The information showed that humans had somehow advanced their military technology by centuries in just a few decades. "How is this possible?" Zethkar asked, looking at weapon designs that should not have existed. "Necessity," Morrison replied. "When your survival depends on constant innovation, you learn to make impossible things possible. We have been doing this for thousands of years." She activated a holographic display showing human ships throughout the galaxy. Strike forces were positioned near every major hegemony world, ready to begin a campaign of total destruction that could last centuries. "This is the message you will deliver," Morrison continued. "Humanity is prepared to fight a war of extermination against your entire empire. We can sustain this level of conflict indefinitely because war is our natural state. We will turn your own colonies against you. We will destroy your supply lines and communication networks. We will hunt your fleets across the galaxy until nothing remains." "And the alternative?" Zethkar asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Peace, recognition of human space as an independent territory, establishment of formal diplomatic relations between equals rather than conqueror and subject, trade agreements that benefit both species, cultural exchange that allows us to learn from each other." Morrison turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Commander, your people made the mistake of thinking that advanced technology makes you superior warriors. We learned long ago that superior warriors create advanced technology, not the other way around. Remember that when you make your report." As the human admiral left his ship, Zethkar realized that everything about this encounter had been carefully planned. The humans had not just defeated his fleet. They had orchestrated the entire battle to send a specific message to hegemony. Leadership. He was not a survivor. He was a messenger, carrying news that would reshape galactic politics forever. The humans had proven they could destroy hegemony forces at will, but they were offering peace instead of conquest. As his damaged ship limped toward hegemony space under human escort, Zethkar began composing the most important report of his career. "How do you explain to your superiors that you have encountered a species that views war as evolution and treats violence as art? How do you tell a galactic empire that it has finally met its match?" Zethkar stood before the Supreme Council of the Hegemony, his scarred body bearing witness to the battle that had changed everything. The great chamber was filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all waiting to hear his report about what should have been a simple conquest. Supreme Admiral Vextar, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like polished stone, leaned forward in his chair. "Commander Zethkar, you stand before this council as the sole survivor of a fleet that was designed to conquer primitive worlds. Explain how this is possible." Zethkar activated the holographic display that showed the battle records from the human system. The images filled the chamber with scenes of destruction that made even veteran military leaders uncomfortable. "Honored Council," he began, we did not encounter a primitive species. We encountered a civilization that has perfected warfare beyond anything we understand. The humans did not just defeat our fleet. They demonstrated that everything we believe about military superiority is wrong. Impossible, declared Counselor Threxnell, his orange tentacles writhing with agitation. No species with such limited technology could threaten hegemony forces. With respect, Counselor, Zethkar replied, the humans proved that advanced technology without advanced warfare tactics is useless. They turned their entire solar system into a weapon. They used physics itself as a tool of destruction. Most importantly, they showed that they are willing to sacrifice everything to protect their independence. He activated another section of the display, showing human ships throughout hegemony space. The intelligence reports from the past weeks painted a terrifying picture of human capabilities. While we have been debating how to respond to their victory, the humans have been demonstrating their reach. Strike forces commanded by officers like Commander Steve Walker have infiltrated every sector of our empire. They know our fleet positions, our supply routes, and our defensive capabilities better than we do. Supreme Admiral Vextar studied the tactical displays with growing concern. How many human ships are currently in our space? Unknown, sir. They appear and disappear at will. Their stealth technology is far beyond anything we possess. But more troubling is their intelligence network. They have been gathering information about us for months, possibly years before first contact. The chamber filled with nervous whispers as the council members realized the implications. If the humans could move freely through hegemony space without detection, no world was safe from attack. What are their demands? Asked Counselor Mershon, her blue skin pale with worry. Zethkar activated the final portion of his presentation. The screen showed Admiral Morrison's diplomatic message, delivered with the calm certainty of someone who held all the strategic advantages. This is Admiral Kate Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, the human woman said from the recording. 2. The leadership of the hegemony. We offer you a choice. You can continue this war and face the complete destruction of your empire, or you can accept peace terms that recognize humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. The message continued, with detailed terms that were surprisingly reasonable. The humans wanted recognition of their territorial boundaries, establishment of formal diplomatic relations, and trade agreements that would benefit both civilizations. They were not demanding tribute or submission, only respect. But the alternative, delivered by General Frank Martinez, was the complete militarization of human space and a campaign of destruction that could last for centuries. We have turned our entire species into a military force, Martinez explained in the recording. We can sustain total war indefinitely because it is our natural state. We will destroy your infrastructure, turn your colonies against you, and hunt your fleets until nothing remains of your empire. The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Never before had the hegemony received terms from a species they had intended to conquer. This is blackmail, Counselor Thraxnell declared. We cannot negotiate with primitives who threaten us. They are not primitives, Zethkar said firmly. They are the most advanced military civilization we have ever encountered. Their technology may be different from ours, but their understanding of warfare surpasses anything in galactic history. Supreme Admiral Vextar leaned back in his chair, his multiple eyes studying the tactical displays. Commander, in your professional opinion, can we defeat them in a prolonged conflict? Zethkar had been dreading this question, but he answered, honestly, no, sir. The humans fight as if losing is not an option. They treat war as evolution, using each conflict to become stronger and more dangerous. A prolonged war with them would destroy both our civilizations, but they are prepared for that outcome while we are not. Explain, Vextar commanded. The humans have spent their entire evolutionary history at war with their environment, with disasters, with diseases, and with each other. They have learned to survive and thrive under conditions that would destroy most species. War is not something they do. War is what they are. Zethkar activated recordings from the battle, showing human tactics that defied conventional military. Wisdom. They use their own ships as weapons when their guns fail. They fight in vacuum using handheld tools. They continue attacking even when mortally wounded. Most importantly, they coordinate their actions across vast distances with perfect timing, as if their entire species shares a single military mind. The council watched footage of human boarding parties fighting through damaged sections of hegemony ships, using tactics that no civilized military would consider. But here is what makes them truly dangerous, Zethkar continued. They are not fighting for conquest or resources. They are fighting for survival. Every human believes that losing this war means the extinction of their species. That level of motivation cannot be defeated by superior technology alone. Counselor Mershen spoke carefully. Are you recommending that we accept their terms? I am recommending that we recognize reality, Zethkar replied. The humans have proven they can destroy our forces at will. They have demonstrated that they can strike anywhere in our empire without warning. Most importantly, they have shown that they are willing to turn their entire civilization into a weapon if necessary. He paused, looking around the chamber at the most powerful beings in the galaxy. But they are also offering us something unprecedented. Instead of demanding our submission, they want to be our equals. Instead of conquering our territories, they want to trade with us. Instead of destroying our civilization, they want to learn from us and teach us in return. Supreme Admiral Vix Tar was quiet for several minutes, studying the intelligence reports and battle recordings. Finally, he spoke. Commander Zethkar, you are saying that we have encountered a species that could destroy us, but chooses not to? Yes. Sir, the humans could have followed my retreating fleet back to hegemony space and begun a campaign of total destruction. Instead, they sent me back with a diplomatic offer. They proved their strength, then offered their friendship. And if we refuse their terms? Zethkar thought about Admiral Morrison's cold blue eyes and General Martinez's calm certainty. Then, we will face a war unlike anything in galactic history. The humans will turn every world in our empire into a battlefield. They will destroy our infrastructure and hunt our fleets until our civilization collapses. And they will do this not out of hatred, but out of necessity. The council voted 3 hours later. The decision was unanimous. 2 weeks after that, Ambassador Carol Young arrived at Hegemony Command Station aboard a single human ship. She carried formal treaties that established humanity as an equal member of galactic civilization, with territorial boundaries that both sides would respect. But she also carried a warning from humanity's military leadership. Any future aggression against human space would be met with total war. The humans had shown mercy once. They would not show it again. As Zethkar watched human ships take their place alongside hegemony vessels in joint patrols of the new borders, he reflected on the lesson his species had learned. Sometimes the greatest victory was knowing when not to fight. The galaxy had gained its most valuable military allies and its most dangerous potential enemies. Humanity had taught the hegemony that strength was not about technology or numbers. Strength was about the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect what you valued most. The humans had proven that some species were too dangerous to conquer and too valuable to destroy. They had earned their place among the stars, not through submission, but through demonstrated superiority in the one skill that mattered most in a hostile universe, the art of survival through victory.